there was someone who famously said, you know, there are two absolute certainties in life, and one is death and taxes. Well, I'm a director, and a director has absolutely one certainty, and that is that if your film makes money, you're a hero, and your career goes up. If your film doesn't make money, you're an orphan, and you go down. As simple as that, your career goes down. To begin with, I never even knew what a director did. I'm a New Zealander. I was brought up on a farm, and my first job after leaving school was working for an aerial mapping firm, right? Aerial mapping, where they made contour maps from aerial photographs. And it was as boring as hell. I mean, it was so boring. And while I was there, for whatever reason, I made an 8mm film. And I sent it down to the New Zealand's national TV station, and I won a competition. I was full of bravado, and I decided I wanted to be a cameraman, a TV cameraman. So I drove down to the station in Wellington, a 200 miles journey on my motorcycle. I got an interview, and I said, you know, I want to be a TV cameraman. I won the competition, and they said, basically, get out. Right. I said to them, well, what about if I go to London? Will I have a chance there? They said, that's less than zero. If you think it's a problem here, wait till you get to London. Right? So I gave up my job at the aerial mapping. I then worked in an abattoirs, right? What was known as, we call them in New Zealand, freezing works, right? A meat packing place. For 9 months I worked there. I earned some money. I got on a boat, and I went to London with virtually no money, no career, and just with this kind of passion to become a cameraman, TV cameraman. Now, at this time, I didn't even know what a director did, right? I had no clue as to what a director did. So when I got to London, I did odd jobs. I worked in a biscuit factory, this, that, and the next thing. And after a couple of months, I went there specifically to a place called Elstree in London. Why? Because MGM Studios were there. Stanley Kubrick was there shooting 2001. There was ABC Studios, a big British studio, and there was also ATV, which was a big TV company. Well, a girlfriend of mine bought in the Daily Telegraph, and guess what? There was an advertisement for trainee cameraman. There was 4 positions. They had 1,400 applicants. I applied, and by some miracle, I actually got one of those jobs. I don't, to this day, know why I got it. I had no experience with cameras. I was very interested in photography. I love movies, all of that stuff, but there was nothing, really. And I guess everybody's career, there's always, luck has a lot to do with that. In my case, this was it. So I then went into TV. And as a cameraman, I was a trainee. And I worked my way up over a period of 4, 5 years, something like that. And at the TV studio, I guess once every 18 months, they would advertise for trainee directors. And 3 times I went up to what they call the sort of board, where you had to have your interview, and 3 times I failed. I didn't get it. At the end of the day, I left the company. I left ATV. I teamed up with a very successful writer, and I was his assistant for quite a long time during the 70s, but I met a lot of producers, directors, people in the film industry, and by this time, directing was what I wanted to do. I had this kind of dream that I wanted to be a director. I wanted to direct movies. And towards the end of the 70s, a friend of mine, a director friend, very good director, he was asked to do a TV series called The Professionals. And it was a big action series. He asked me to do his second unit, which I did. And because of that, the producers of the series said to me, well, you can do second unit on the next one and the next one. And then they gave me episodes to direct. And from there, I did I think 4 or 5 major series. They were very successful TV series, and it was very simple because what you got was 2 weeks preparation. You were given a script. You couldn't change the script. You couldn't do any work on it. There's your script. 2 weeks prep, 8 days shoot, 4 days edit, out. So you really learned your trade. You had to work fast. You had to be on your toes, and you had to know what you were doing. So great training ground. Roughly about 1985, I did a TV series called Edge of Darkness. It was a 6-parter, and it turned out to be very successful. It won, I think, 6 Academy Awards and so on and so forth. And my agent came to me and said, look, you've got to go to Hollywood. You've got to go to Hollywood based on this, right? So off I go with him to Hollywood, and I meet executives, I meet agents, I go to the studios, and they're all telling me how wonderful the series was. And after a while, I realized they hadn't even seen the damn series. They hadn't even looked. So this was Hollywood, introduction to Hollywood, all these people saying how terrific it was, how wonderful it was, and most of them had never even seen the series. Right. But subsequent to that, I got a script called Criminal Law was given to me. The company said, yes, we want to make it, and we want you to direct it. I thought, terrific, that's great. This is what I've dreamt about. A movie, to start with, is never green lit. In other words, what a green light means is you're going to make the movie. They're going to finance it, it's going to happen. They only do this when they've cast the movie. The company said, look, why don't we get Timothy Hutton, right? He's absolutely terrific. So I meet Timothy Hutton. Hutton really liked the script, said, yes, I'll do it. A week later, the head of the company said, no, we don't want Timothy Hutton. Go and meet Jeff Daniels, right? So I go and meet Jeff Daniels. And over a period of probably 3 or 4 months, they changed their mind about the cast at least 5 or 6 times. It was terrible. They wouldn't greenlight the movie. So with this, we finally end up, I had to go to the man's office, the head of the company's office, lock his office door, and I said, I want Gary Oldman. You all know Gary Oldman, right? Yeah, terrific. So I said to him, pick up the phone and make the deal. So he said, yes. Okay. So he did. He made the deal with Gary. I let him out of the room, and I thought, that's it. Thank God, we can now go ahead. Next day, he rings me and says, what about Jeff Goldblum? Why don't we get... Mercifully, that went away, and we made the film. The film went fine. I did the editing. That was fine. Showed it to the company. They liked it. They had a preview. Now, previews, I was so naive, I didn't even know they had previews. That's where they get people off the street, basically. They're invited to come to a showing of your film, and as they come in, they're handed questionnaires. A lot of questions on it. And the questions, first of all, did you like it? Did you think the film was excellent? Did you think it was very good? Did you think it was good? Did you think it was fair? Is the film too long? Is it too short? Which actor did you like best? Which character did you like best? Which did you like least? So you sit there cringing in the back, watching this, your film basically get ripped apart by the audience, because they're all critics, of course. Right. And what happens is that once the audience leaves and all this stack of questionnaires, they go through it, analyze it, and based on that, they will tell you that, so they all think it's a little bit too slow at the end, right? So we'll have a second preview. You need to recut the picture and see if we can improve, right? The only 2 boxes they're interested in are very good and excellent. And what they're aimed to do is you're marked 1 out of 100, basically. And mercifully on Criminal Law, it was highly rated. We got a very good score, which was great because we didn't have a second preview. I forget what the figure was, probably, I don't know, 78, 80, something like that. That was good. My next film was a film called Defenseless. We made the movie, and I edited the movie, and we previewed it. The preview was a disaster, absolute disaster. And out of 100, it scored 25. So it was dreadful. I mean, I came out of there out of the preview as though I'd been hit with a baseball bat. I couldn't believe it. My editor got fired. We did 3 days extra shooting. We put the film together. The company had their cut, I had my cut. Both cuts were previewed, and theirs got a few points more than mine, so that was the cut that went out. It was a very sobering experience. And for a director, to have your film basically torn apart, it's kind of shocking. But you learn some lessons. And then I luckily was offered a film by HBO called Cast a Deadly Spell. I made that movie, and the movie fortunately got very good reviews and was very successful for HBO. So I managed to fight my way back. The next movie I did was a movie called No Escape, which I shot in Australia. Anyway, that film didn't make any money, again. So, as I said before, your film makes money, you go up. It doesn't make money, you go down. So I get a call from the head of MGM, and he says, a man called John Kelly. And he says, would you come to my office? So I go to his office, and he says, how would you like to direct Bond? And I couldn't believe it. I said, what do you mean? He said, direct Bond, how would you like to do it? I said, why me? Why would you choose me? Thinking No Escape didn't do any business. And he said, well, I saw Edge of Darkness, the TV series, which I really liked, and I also saw No Escape, right? Which I thought you did a great job, blah, 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 and it's a much bigger film than the budget would suggest. So do you want to do Bond? So I said yes. And that was the best period in, the politics. There were no politics really with it at all. The great thing is I had two terrific producers, Barbara and Michael, Barbara Broccoli, Michael Wilson. The problem for them was that it was 6 years since they'd done the previous Bond film. And the Bond film had not done that well. It made a profit, but I think it was one of the lowest returns, and that was the Tim Dalton movie. Now we cast Pierce Brosnan. Pierce was originally going to do it before Tim Dalton, but because of a contractual problem with the TV series he was doing in America, he couldn't do it. So we had Pierce. The problem was the studio felt that Bond was past its sell-by date. In other words, there was a 6-year gap between the Dalton one and the one that I was doing, GoldenEye. The wall had come down, the Cold War was finished. Did anybody actually really want to go and see Bond anymore? So that was their problem, which meant the budget was very tight. But we had to do cost cutting. We were originally going to St. Petersburg. I don't know if you remember the tank chase in that movie. The whole unit was going to go to St. Petersburg to shoot the tank chase. We didn't have the money to do it, so we sent the second unit to St. Petersburg to do it. We built St. Petersburg at the studio, and we shot the sequence there. So the film, fortunately, turned out very successfully, and for the first time, I had actually made something that had made a lot of money and was very successful. Then it came to Zorro, which was a film I didn't want to do. I was actually offered the script, and I thought the script was awful, and I said no. A week later, they came back and said, you have to do this script, and I said, no, I don't want to do it. End of story. And then a week later, they came back again. They brought me up there, and they say, you have to do it. And again, I only got out of the room by saying, well, I'll think about it. So I left the office, I went down to my office, the phone was ringing, and it was Steven Spielberg, who is his company were making the film, Sony was financing it. And he told me how wonderful I was and all that, and by the way, I want you to do Zorro. So of course, blowing smoke up my bum and telling me how wonderful I was. And so I decided to do it, and then thought this is the worst decision I've ever made. So Banderas was on board. Tony Hopkins, who played the older Zorro, was doing a film up in Canada, and I went to see him in Calgary, where he was shooting, and he said, I can't do it. He said, I have a terrible back. I'd love to do it, but I can't. I came back to LA, and I sent it to Alain Delon, of all people, in France, because he spoke perfect English. He had played Zorro before. Never heard from him, never heard back, never. And which was a good thing, because Hopkins rang me and said, I can do it. Catherine Zeta-Jones was someone that Spielberg suggested. So I'm now agreed to do it. I'm halfway through pre-production, And then the whole of the top brass at the studio got fired, and they were replaced, which now meant the people that had greenlit the movie had gone. Any incoming executives, they never want to do the projects of the outgoing. Luckily, the man who was now heading the studio, the new head of the studio, was again John Kelly, who I'd done GoldenEye with. He rang me up and he said, I don't like the script, I don't like the project, and I don't think it'll make any money. I said, good, well, just cancel it then. And I said, I'm fed up with it. I never wanted to do it in the first place anyway. So 10 days later, we're greenlit. And I rang him up and said, why the hell did you greenlight this film? He said, well, I'm in it for $12 million because of writers and actors, and we've got Banderas who had to be held over, and the cost is $12 million. So if I cancel, I have to pay $12 million. He said, even if it's terrible, I can get 45 million foreign. So anyway, we went down to Mexico, we shot it, no executives turned up, and they even sent a directive to say, tell Martin to cut the training scene, which is actually one of the best scenes in the film. Cut it. We can't afford it. Cut it. And I went to the producer and I said, you know, screw them. What I'll do is I'll shoot for a day and a half. Don't tell the studio, that's what we'll do. So we did. Anyway, we finished the film and we went back to the studio. Nobody turned up. They'd kind of given up on the film. There's always a big moment when you show the studio your cut, the director's cut. I remember coming out the day they saw the film, and they were all coming towards me. I came out of it, and they all looked like they were going to a funeral. They all had this expression of like, you know, this is going to be awful. Anyway, they came in, and the reverse happened. Of course, they loved it, and suddenly, of course, nothing was too much. Literally, in the space of seeing the movie, they got me a better office. They did all the usual stuff, and mercifully the film turned out okay, and it made them a lot of money. So if you get knocked down 100 times, get up for the 101st and keep going no matter what.